Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRC Media. You know, we're getting closer to the November 8th state election, and we're trying to speak to as many candidates as possible to give you an opportunity to make an informed decision at the ballot box. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by our state senator here in Fall River, who is going to be looking for his 7th term as a state senator in Fall River, State Senator Michael Rodrigues, who is a Democrat running in the race. He does have a challenger, Republican Russell Protentis, in the November 8th election. Senator Rodrigues, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me on. It's always good to talk to you, Keith.
You know,
it's good to see you in person. Usually we're doing it across Zoom or whatever.
Well, no, that's right.
The State House.
For our news pieces, it's good to do it in person.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, looking for your 7th term in office, I actually had a conversation with Representative Paul Schmid. He's also looking for his 7th term, as he replaced you in the House side.
Right.
Is there a shelf life to these positions in your? I mean, do you feel that, you know, obviously you get elected every year and there's an opportunity there, but do you feel like there could be a shelf life?
I think there could be. Yes. Yeah. Certainly. I haven't reached that point yet. I mean, I've never worked harder. I've never had a position of more responsibility, and I've held a number of chairmanships in important positions over my 26 years in the legislature, but I really feel like I'm at my peak right now. You know, as my peers are all beginning to retire, as my younger brother retired, you know, here I am working harder than I ever have, but loving every minute of it. You know, if you're happy doing what you do, then you know you never consider it work. It's my passion.
Yeah. I mean, when you were a state representative and now as a state senator more so because you have more responsibility in terms of your area that you serve. You serve, you know, urban areas like Fall River and a lot of suburban and even some rural areas.
Yeah. How
do you work through trying to meet the needs of those different demographic constituencies?
By listening to them, first and foremost. What I love about my job is the diversity of the issues that I deal with. It's not like I'm doing the same thing every day. I'm not talking about the same issue every hour. I'm talking about something different. In my communities of Freetown, in Lakeville, in Rochester, cranberries. You know, I serve as the co-chair of the Cranberry Research Station, which is part of UMass Amherst. It's located in Wareham. It's the preeminent cranberry research facility in the world. I'm proud, and it's you know, we talk about the effects that climate change is having on cranberries, different insects and mites and bees and the mating habits of pollinators, all this stuff. Like, you never talk about that in Fall River. Fall River is an urban area, and with it, of an older gateway city comes the issues, many social issues, housing, insurance, healthcare, you know, those type of issues that we deal with in Fall River. Westport, farming and fishing. Somerset, the reuse of Brayton Point Power Plant and transitioning from, you know, 19th and 20th century coal power to 21st century offshore wind power. You know, Swansea's got, they're really focused on the redevelopment of the old Swansea Mall area, and that's going really well. So it's by being nimble, it's by listening, it's by a lot of work, and we've been successful in all of these communities in helping them achieve their goals.
Yeah. Have there been any conflicts at all when there may be an issue that may be more of a benefit to a city like Fall River than in a suburban or rural area that, you know, some of the towns may say to you, hey, Senator, I'm glad you're helping Fall River, but it may not be the best for us. Has there been any of those conflicts?
Not really. The closest that it might come is on school Chapter 70 funding formula, because the formula is based on the wealth of a community, and with factors such as the number of children where English is a second language, because it costs a lot more money to educate a child if English is not their first language, or low and moderate income children. So the funding formula factors a higher percentage of money to not just Fall River, but any gateway, any similar situated city, as opposed to the suburbs that do have wealthier there's more wealth. Not that they're rich, not that there aren't poor people in Westport or Somerset or Swansea. It's just the fun. That's the closest thing. Other than that, it's not urban versus suburban or rural, or a city versus town. It's whatever makes the most sense to help the most citizens.
In your 6 terms as senator, and we'll talk about that part, because you did serve part of Fall River in the state legislature on the House side.
Yes.
What's now the 8th Bristol District. Was it the 8th back then?
It was still the 8th Bristol District. It looked a lot different.
It looked
though.
like,
Yes.
Yeah, you had a little more of Fall River maybe than
Yes, I did. I had 5 precincts in Fall River. I think currently Rep. Schmidt only has 2.
Right.
But he also has Freetown, which I never had, and Acushnet, and a piece of New Bedford. He's got a real diverse district.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me ask you, in your time as state senator, are there like a few issues that you can point at to say, making your case for re-election that this is where I really delivered to Fall River?
Oh boy, absolutely.
By the way, we only have a limited amount of time.
Absolutely. I was responsible for the construction of the South Watuppa Day Beach boat ramp, the Bicentennial Park boat ramp. Worked with Rep. Sylvia on the Cook Pond boat ramp. All of the improvements on and around the waterfront. Public safety staffing grants. Number one issue in Fall River I hear the most is public safety. And in 2011, my first term as senator, coming off on the heels of some 9C cuts, where the mayor of Fall River had to make some budget reductions in the police department and downsize, we were able to secure public safety staffing grants to help those communities gear back up. They're still there. And last year alone, $1.26 million delivered to Fall River for police and fire, public safety personnel, staffing, where the boots hit the ground, where the rubber hits the road, providing support for staffing. But I can go on and on. The Kerr Mill site, when I was first elected in the legislature, the Kerr Mill site was nothing but piles of demolished buildings and weeds. And look at it now with Meditech there. Yeah, I could go on and on. But it's not just I delivered. It's working with when I was in the House, I worked with first Senator Tom Norton, then Senator Joan Menard, and now as senator I work with Representative Sylvia, Representative Fiola, Representative Schmid. I've worked with Representative Sullivan. I've worked with Representative Aguiar. Yeah. I can go on and on.
You mentioned earlier education and about education funding and how it's increased here in Fall River based on a new formula. That's the Student Opportunity Act.
Correct.
That we hear a lot about here in Fall River. How much of that potentially can be a game changer for a city like Fall River if it's appropriated in the right way?
So I will look any of school administrators or school committee in the eye and say money is no longer a factor. This current fiscal year, FY23, the fiscal year that we just began, July, there was a $23 million increase in Fall River's Chapter 70 allocation. I think it's $168 million, was that? That's on top of the $13 million increase the year before, on top of the $11 million increase the year before that. So the problem, they are having issues in spending the money because of labor and workforce constraints. It's no different there than in the private sector. Every employer right here in the private sector, irregardless of their industry, is labor and workforce. That's their biggest issue. Same thing with the school department. So it's absolutely can be a game changer. There's more on the way next year. In this time, we are actually lucky that we've had budget surpluses. We've actually created what's called the SOA, Student Opportunity Act. We call it SOA, a SOA escrow account. So we've already put money aside, knowing that there's going to be a significant increase next year and the year after of what we're responsible for under that bill. So we're already we're able to put some money aside for that. And the beneficiaries are, without a doubt, our gateway cities, where there are so many students where English is not their primary language, so many low and moderate income, so many immigrant in the school system. So Fall River, brand new Durfee High School right down the road here. It's absolutely gorgeous. So many other brand new schools and buildings. So they've got real 21st century facilities and some funding to make them work to the best of their potential.
You mentioned the increase in state revenue. We've talked about this before as well, how the state auditor just ruled that nearly $3 billion is to go back to taxpayers.
Yep.
Does that impact at all things like making sure that the state's rainy day fund is at a certain level? Were we as Massachusetts residents taxed too much? I know based on that law.
Based on that law, we were.
The answer is yes.
Based
But
on-
I guess, is there ever going to be opportunities to, and I will talk about the economic development bill separately in a
Right.
moment, which may have some tax relief in it as well.
Right.
But in terms of moving forward, is there any fear that if this happens again and there's asked for more money, that there could be better ways for it to be allocated?
The law is the law.
Yeah.
And Chapter 62F, that was passed by voter referendum in 1986 and has sat dormant since 1987. What's that, 35 years?
Yeah.
Is definitely has, it takes $3 billion. We're heretofore, we're in our accounts that we could do things like make all these additional investments, and we give it back to the taxpayers, and it will happen, as the law states it will happen. I'm the budget nerd. I mean, prior to realizing that we were going to trip that trigger, and I can explain why some of us disagree how the trigger is structured, but prior to that, I was thinking of nerdy things like paying down our unfunded pension liability. And currently, our annual pension liability allotment, assessment is about $7 billion. If we paid down half of that, we took $3.5 billion and paid it up front, that $3.5 billion investment will return about $18 billion in 2035, right? That's the type, it's long, you're not going to realize this benefit. I mean, in 2035, I'll probably be long gone, but somebody's going to say, whoa, they were geniuses back then to do this. They just saved us. But irregardless, that's not going to happen. I do not believe in automatic triggers. My staff knows that I don't index anything. People say, oh, you should index this to the cost of inflation. No, we shouldn't. We should not give up our prerogative, our discretion to a formula. And when we have unexpected one-time revenues, those should be utilized for long-term one-time investments, like paying off the unfunded pension liability, OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and the like. But the law is the law, and we will follow the law and return that money. And you had mentioned the economic development bill. This has an absolute impact on that bill.
Yeah, and I want to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to follow along in terms of revenue.
Right.
What do you think this will mean for ballot question number 1 in terms of that constitutional amendment which the House and Senate passed through Constitutional Convention to raise, to add an extra 4% tax on those making $1 million a year? Could some people say the state's been flush with money, why do they need more?
Yes, you could. Some people could say that, but we're flush with money. It's a one-time phenomenon, which is why I disagree. Now I'm really getting into the weeds, but why I disagree with the way the trigger was established in 62F. That was back 35, 36 years ago when they designed this. The reason why these taxes were called overtaxation and had to be these revenues are as a result of unprecedented the infusion of federal dollars. 133 billion federal dollars has flowed into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in many ways, shapes, and form. The results of which created additional revenue for the Commonwealth. That is not part of wages and salaries, quote, I'm doing air quotes because that's what the law references. So you'll never see this amount of surplus again.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to move now on to the economic development.
Yeah.
That's also a big issue here.
Yes.
In Fall River. South Coast Rail, of course, will be here.
Right.
About a year from now, a little over a year from now.
Yes.
The trains will be coming through. How important is that for the city, and how will in terms of economic development, this bill that's still before the legislature, how will that impact potentially more investment here?
So we, as a collective we, myself and my colleagues in the Senate and our friends in the House of Representatives, each passed a version of an economic development bill. I was quoted in the press as calling it the kitchen sink bill because it had a little bit of everything. It had direct cash spending from our surplus. It had spending from ARPA. It had taxes, tax relief. It had all types of components of a mismatch. It's a mismatched bill. Bottom line, it spent about $4.4 billion. That's going to get trimmed greatly. Matter of fact, I was on a call on my way here negotiating. We want to get this bill done in the next couple of weeks.
So this happened before the election, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
It will happen before October 30th.
Just to let people know who are watching, we're actually recording this prior to the election. People may see this just before the election, so this may have happened.
So
depending on
we want to get this on the governor's desk before October 30th. Why is October 30th important? Because that's the statutory date by which the comptroller of the Commonwealth has to close our books. This kitchen sink bill just got bigger because we added another bay to the sink, that being the final closeout SUP for FY22. We have to put FY22's books to bed. And so, I can tell you investments in that bill included $1 million for the Battleship Massachusetts. I secured $1 million for them in the ARPA bill. Look what they've done with it. They've painted the ship. They've never looked better. But those ships need more work. There's another $1 million in there for the Battleship Massachusetts. I can go on and on about all different types of earmarks and sections of the bill as it relates to the city of Fall River and the region. But we will get something done.
Let me just ask you then, there was a part of that bill which included, more tax relief.
Right.
Is that going to survive?
I don't know if that will survive because we're doing pretty significant tax relief as it is, $3 billion worth. That bill included the largest permanent tax relief proposal in Massachusetts history, over $500 million, not one-time cash back, but permanent tax relief, including fixing the estate tax. Massachusetts has a very regressive estate tax, including more money for earned income tax credit for low-income workers, including additional tax credits for child independent care, tax credits, increasing those. I don't know if they'll survive it this time. Probably.
Could some of them survive? I mean,
some of them could survive.
Some concerning seniors as well.
Senior circuit breaker tax credits were in there. Some of them could survive, but in light of the fact that you can only spend $1 once, Keith, and we're spending $3 billion of it in tax relief. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
I want to ask you your opinion on a couple of the ballot questions that people in Fall River will see.
Yep.
Let's start with the local one, which is the Mbta issue.
Right.
Right. That has to do with the rail station. We talked about it before.
Right.
Next year it'll be open. There's some concerns by some people that the Mbta having some issues financially, they could have a big deficit next year. That Fall River may need to pay some of that bill. What do you?
Yeah, no, that's not true. I know there's some unfounded concerns. The fact is, we are going to join the MBTA for commuter rail service, but we are part of the SRTA, Southeast Regional Transit Authority, for our bus service. We have an assessment for that. Fall River, every community has an assessment for that. That assessment offsets any assessments to the Mass Bay Transit Authority. Remember, in Boston, it's all MBTA, buses and trains, right? We have a separate regional transit authority, so there'll be no additional assessments. That's just it's really a formality to ensure that Fall River is part of the system going forward. And the MBTA, does need infusion of money. It will not come from the local taxpayers. It'll come from us and the state. We, in the FY23 budget, I think it was $316 million. In addition to the fact that the MBTA gets 1 penny of the sales tax, over $800 million. All of that is on top of the fares that they collect. The MBTA, every public transit entity, public transportation is expensive. The MBTA being that, but there's going to be so much benefits from the. We've been touting it for 30 years, since before I was in service. They've been talking about the benefits of connecting Fall River and New Bedford to Boston via rail.
So any, I'm going to use the term bailout of the MBTA would come that every taxpayer in the Commonwealth.
It will come from tax. It will come from an appropriation by.
So it wouldn't be just the members of the MBTA.
It'll be the entire state. Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving forward, you have been now chair of Ways and Means for what, 2 years?
4.
4 years.
It'll be 4 in February.
It'll be 4 years.
Yeah.
When you get back.
Right.
How important is that, do you think, to your reelection? Is that something that people should consider when they think that, you know, there is some clout there that brings benefits back?
A lot of that is inside baseball, though. Right. You know, the fact is, you know, there's never been a chair of Senate Ways and Means from Greater Fall River. There's one from New Bedford. Senator Montigny was back in the 90s, but we've never had a Fall River senator as chair of Ways and Means. You know, every single bill, every bill that has a fiscal impact to the Commonwealth comes through my committee. So I do have a lot of influence on all pieces of legislation, especially funding vehicles. Every budget, every supplemental budget, every bond bill, everything, we write it in our committee. And it pays benefits. I mean, you know, I write the budget, so, you know, if we need more money for Bristol Community College, we want to make, I don't have to file an amendment and hope that I just write it in the budget. I am very responsible, and that's why, you know, I think I've gotten good marks and good grades and pundits from my colleagues. I don't take advantage of the responsibility I have. I could, but I don't. And I would hope that the citizens of Fall River understand and realize the benefit of having their senator as chair of the Ways and Means Committee.
Do you hope to continue in that role?
I do. I mean, there's only one step, there's only one rung of the ladder above me now, you know, so I think I'm pretty good at it. You know, I never thought that, you know, my second budget in, we'd be shut down by a pandemic. Right. You know, and we did it. We have operated under some pretty I say we, because again, I don't do it alone. I have my partners in the House, Representative Michaelwitz, the House Chair. You know, we did it. We've done a very good job. Yeah.
As we wrap up, a couple of other quick questions. Sure. You know, we hear, and I've talked to you about this before, we hear a lot about in Washington the divisiveness between the political parties. Yep. Here in Massachusetts, it appears that our legislature has always worked well amongst itself in the two parties, and also most of the time with those in the executive branch. Yep. How important is that?
I scratch my head when I think about what I hear and I read and I see on television and what's happening in D.C. How do they get anything done functioning like that? We are certainly, the majority party is overwhelmingly Democratic in Massachusetts. We have some really smart Republican colleagues. My minority leader, the Senate minority leader, Senator Bruce Tarr, is probably one of the most articulate, brightest men you'll ever meet in your life. He's from Gloucester. Big, important commercial fishing fleet in Gloucester, as we have in New Bedford and on the South Coast. He's a tremendous ally. You know, we had a Republican governor, Charlie Baker, who, by the way, again, I scratch my head, has been consistently voted the most popular governor in the whole country. And the Republican Party, the real right wing of the Republican Party, threw him away, kicked him to the curb. You're not Republican enough, you know. You don't hate gays. You're pro-choice. You know, you don't kill immigrants. You don't want to. You know, you want to help. You know, I'll say this as a Democrat. Charlie Baker has been a tremendous partner and governor. Very good to Fall River in the South Coast. Right. You know, I could call him right now on my cell phone and he'll answer the phone. Hey, Mr. Chair, that's how he is. He's always happy. Hey, Mr. Chair, what can I do for you?
That goes back, and I'm going to use a phrase of former Bristol president Jack Sprague says that's the importance of keeping the main thing.
Right.
He used to reference that quote quite often.
Right.
That keeping your eye on the ball and working in the best interest of the Commonwealth.
That's right. And we've certainly had our disagreements.
Yeah.
We've had
Oh, sure.
we've had plenty of our disagreements. We have plenty of disagreements between the Senate and Republican, inter-branch disagreements.
Right.
We do, but different opinions and having disagreements at the end of the day lead to a better finished product. If you can put personalities aside, if you can actually hear what someone who disagrees with you or has another idea or a different idea of what they're trying to get at the end of the day, the finished product is much better.
Do you have one or two items that you'd like to work on over the next 2 years if reelected? That may be new, let's say.
I would say continuing to work on offshore wind and expanding Massachusetts' position. We were first in. We were delayed by 4 years, by a federal government and a president that wanted to bring coal back and throw renewable energy away. But we're back on track. But other states have kind of caught up to us. So continuing to position Massachusetts as the leader in North America when it comes to offshore wind, I think is important. Helping our public institutions of higher education like Bristol Community College and UMass Dartmouth and Bridgewater State University, help them transition into the new reality that demographics have changed. There's less number of students going to college and they're competing. So, help with that. And continue to work with my local partners, our mayor, our city council, our members of select boards through all my communities and helping them provide. That's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to government. They provide the basic essential services, and we want to help them as much as possible.
I'm going to give you about a minute to speak to the residents of Fall River. Right, that's your camera right there on my left. So, and why they should consider Michael Rodrigues again for another term.
Thank you very much, Keith. I'm happy to speak to all the residents of Fall River. First of all, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for the last 12 years to serve as your state senator. I work 24/7. I am available. I am accessible. Most of you, I think, if not all of you, have my cell phone, and I answer the phone. I want to continue serving all of you day in and day out, and I will continue to make you proud, I hope. I will continue to work hard every day to earn your vote. I very much value, the fact that I have so many good relationships with so many of you, and the fact that you can call me, you can email me, you can text me on your particular issue, and we can sometimes agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, I think Fall River is a much better place since I've been serving as its state senator, and I hope to continue in that role.
All right, Senator Michael Rodrigues, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Anytime. Very good. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining me here on FRC Media. And please make a point to vote by November 8th.